3 years ago it was summertime. My boy Marcus, he was like, yo, bro, we should start a podcast. And I'm like, you know what, bro, that would be a good idea. Procrastinated for about 3 months. I kept writing in my journal, like, think of name for podcast this week. Think of name for podcast. 3 months later, came up with Walk to Wealth. And the little quick story behind it is for the 99% of us, it's a long walk to wealth. And some may walk quicker than others, but what good is sprinting to the finish line if you pass out when you cross it? 3 years ago it was summertime. My boy Marcus me and him would always hop on FaceTime. And he was like, yo, bro, we should start a podcast. And I'm like, you know what, bro, that would be a good idea. And he ended up going back to college. If you know me a little bit, you know that I dropped out and went into real estate. And so our schedules didn't match up anymore. And I still wanted to move forward with the podcast. Procrastinated for about 3 months. I kept writing in my journal, like, think of name for podcast this week. Think of name for podcast. 3 months later, came up with Walk to Wealth. And the little quick story behind it is for the 99% of us that aren't overnight sensations, it's a long walk to wealth. And some may walk quicker than others, but what good is sprinting to the finish line if you pass out when you cross it? And so that was the birth of the podcast. Now, if you can see here, and you can clap it up for that. December 20th of 2021 was when I dropped my very first trailer. Who wants to hear it? It's probably bad, but I figured why not?
Let's hear it.
Let's see if the audio works. Honestly, I don't even know. This is probably gonna sound awful, but we'll see how it sounds. Let's see.
Have you ever thought of financial independence, but don't know where on earth to start? Do you have an idea of where to start, but are having trouble getting over the fear, or you're unsure? Well, you came to the right place. I'm your host, John Mendez, real estate agent with Keller Williams, and I'm also an investor. This show is going to help you start your journey to wealth and keep on progressing.
That did not age well at all. That did not age well.
Become obtainable and tear down a lot of the misconceptions tied to wealth. Lastly, I'm going to discuss many other topics such as mindset, self-improvement, and work-life balance to show that a wealthy life is more than just the money you make. They say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So make sure to subscribe and join me as we walk to wealth. Make sure to tune in January 16th for the premiere, and then every Sunday for new episodes.
It feels a little surreal just listening back, man. An agent with Keller Williams. I'm still licensed, by the way. I didn't completely leave real estate. But man, that did not age well at all. Nor do I have any investments as of right now. So went down a completely different path. But yeah, now we're officially at 194, I think, just dropped this morning. And this is going to be the official 200th episode when this eventually does air. We got Brandon recording. Shout out to Brandon. And so I want to bring up my very first guest today. Eric, I got the chance to meet him. There's tons of networking events that go on here in Stanford, so I'm actually not sure which one it was that we actually met at, but it was one of them, and we had a great conversation. And then he also goes to LA Fitness, so we work out, not together, but 6:30 in the morning, bump into him, and then we just chop it up about marketing, about crypto sometimes, about a whole bunch of stuff. He has a massive SEO agency right now, killing the game, so put your hands together, give a round of applause to my good friend Eric. All righty. We're gonna sit down, man. We're gonna sit down. This background is cool.
Shows where it started. I like
Yeah,
it.
this is where it started. This is the origin. This is the origin story, man. Hasn't had the opportunity, hasn't had the pleasure to get to meet you yet, to get to know you yet. Tell us your quick elevator pitch. You know, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm gonna give one of my favorite elevator speeches. So my name is Eric Monies, and my first question to you guys is, how many of you made a Google search today? Online, on the computer, somewhere, on your phone. All right. How many of you clicked on the top 3 results? How many of you clicked on one of the top 3 results? All right. That's what we do. Online Biz Builders is a SEO and Google pay-per-click agency where we put your business in those top 3 results. So that's where I've been for the past 4 years, building my business step by step, brick by brick, and we're based in Stanford, right down on Summer Street.
Amazing. So the first question I always ask is, take us back in the time machine. What was little Eric like growing up?
Oof. I don't know how deep I want to go into that one. Definitely a troublemaker. When I was in school, I was definitely the one who was getting in trouble. And definitely, you know, you see those memes and everything online of the entrepreneur story of the teachers telling their kids they're not going to make it or anything. I was actually one of those kids, just because I didn't like to follow the rules, and I always like to do things my way. And when somebody told me to do something specifically, I was like, well, why can't I do it this way? You know, like, and they'd be like, no, it has to be this way. I'm just like, no, like, I'm not doing it. So little Eric was a menace.
All right, so when did this journey start? I know for me, around my sophomore-ish year of college is when my brain kind of like, oh, there's another path that isn't the traditional track. What was that like epiphany for you? Like, when did that occur? When did you go all into like entrepreneurship, business, and just jump in?
So I was very fortunate. I've got other entrepreneurs in my family that I got to have some insight, but I never fully understood to what extent it was. When I really was like, business is different, and you know, you don't have to follow the traditional path, was actually in college. So I was a part of a pretty big party house. But when I got in, we turned that party house into a thriving business. And in college, you know, making a little bit of money here and there is always appreciated, but we got to a point where we were making $6 grand a month. Jeez. And that was just, you know, throwing parties in our basement and packing out the house. And let me say, this wasn't some big glorious house. This wasn't, you know, this isn't what you picture in Florida with those giant frat houses. This was like, you could punch a hole through the wall and your hand would be outside, you know. There was, you know, more times than I could admit, there's people sleeping on the porch. You know, we'd wake up in the morning, and some of those times it might have been me. I don't know. But the interesting part, I remember one of the first parties where, like, and it wasn't just me by myself. I want to state that awesome team that we built. An interesting part was after one party, the next day, you know, we're all kind of like getting our mental status back together, and we go up to one of the rooms, and the finance guy comes up, and he just brings up a bag full of money, and I'm just like, whoa, like, that's pretty cool. Like, all we did was have fun last night and promote ourselves, you know, say, you know, take care of people, make sure they're all right, and we just brought up a bag full of money, and that's just from having drinks and people having a good time. So at that point, I started to actually step away from that and get into other business ventures, which fell into like crypto, forex, and nothing like IML, which there's nothing, no problems with that or whatever. No comment. But you know, learning on that stuff on my own, and I started to step away from the party scene and started getting into business, and that's where I started to build my agency. I was actually in my room at that house, and it was an interesting transition, because I remember the guys there that they were like, you know, why aren't you partying? I'm just like, I'm busy, you know, and when you're in college, everyone's like, well, that's not a good excuse, you know, get out here and shotgun a beer, and it's like, I can't, you know, all right, you know, maybe one.
I keep the mic, I feel like passing back and forth. We're interviewing you today, right? I remember being in college, and so I went to UConn, and we had Gilly probably knows, we had I think, what's it called, the go passes, or when you can go grab and go. What's it called? I think they're called go passes. So like, you have your dining halls and you can eat, and then you have your go passes, and you can get at nighttime, you had a certain number per semester. And so I'm a hungry kid, so mine used to run out all the time. And I remember I used to have like to ask my other friends to use their UConn ID to go to grab and go so I can get food to eat that night. And I just remember like my job at I had a dining hall job, and like that little bit of money went like a long way. So like being a broke college student was like super rough. So making $6 grand a month, I know it wasn't all going into your pocket, but like, man, that's extremely impressive. And then you started your business while you actually were still in college.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So you kind of became a little bit of like a black sheep. How was that like?
It was difficult at first, because you start to have conflicting mindsets with the people that are around you, and it's difficult because you start seeing a different path, you start seeing things differently, and the people that you're initially around, they don't see it the same way. They see it as like, oh, you're just busy, and you're like, you know, you're too busy for us now. It's just like, That's not it. I have a vision, and back then I didn't even have the full vision. It was just an idea, and I just started it and stuck with it. So it was definitely difficult. Sometimes you get some people that'll see your vision and cheer you on, but like their vision's not going to align.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, networking with like-minded people is super important, and really connecting, because I don't want to say the average person, but like the average person who doesn't have that kind of vision isn't going to have that same connection. So that's why that's really important.
Let me ask you about networking, man. Because I've gone to a lot of networking events. I met almost every single one of you here at a networking event of some sort over the past couple years since I went on this journey. And like, I'm the guy, I've heard tons of times, like the more hands you shake, the more money you make. And there's people who go to networking events, and nothing against them, but they'll go to networking events and they'll just pass out business cards to every person they meet within the first couple seconds they meet. I've gone to events where people will come to the event before everyone sits down and put their business card on the seats before everyone even gets there. So like, you pretty much have to pick up their business card. You don't even have a choice. And I've just seen so many like wrong ways to network. And for me, my mindset always been like, do I align with this person? If so, let me talk to them. I have 1 or 2 deep conversations at an event, and then I go to more events, and then I'll just keep talking to those same people. And eventually, I make a deep connection with that person and just am able to build on that and collaborate with that person, and other opportunities open up. So like, what's your thoughts on networking? How do you go about making connections with people?
Yeah, no, that's some great points. It's got to be a real relationship. So just like you said, if somebody's just like putting their business cards down just to get your attention, they're not making any real relationship with you. That's pretty much just a waste of a business card. It's just going to go in the pocket. There's no actual connection to the business card. So not even directly to the person, just to the business card. So like, for example, if we're sitting here having a connection and I hand you a business card, that you're going to remember me based off of that card. Whereas if you just see my card on a table, it's just another card that's on the table.
Yeah.
It's probably going to end up in the trash. So like, you have to build meaning to your relationships when you're networking. And another point that I actually do have on networking is great, and you need to make sure that you're getting out and meeting people and meeting the right people and building those relationships, but you don't want to overdo it, because if you're spending all your time networking but you're not building your foundation, then you're kind of losing out in one of those spaces. So it's about having the right balance. That's what it's really about.
And I agree 100%. I want to do a little bit of a quick pivot here, right? Can you tell us about a time where like you had thoughts about whether or not you made the right decision going into business, and what that time of your life was like, and how you navigated your way through it?
Often. To pick one time is kind of hard, because when things are going great, it's phenomenal, and it's just like, it's like a drug. It's just, everything is phenomenal, everything feels amazing, everything's going the right way, and then one thing could break and it's just a train wreck. Everything will fall apart, and those are actually the most important times. So when the things are going great, fantastic, you actually should, I'm not going to say avoid those times. Of course you want to live for those times, and that's what you're looking for as a business owner, right? Everybody wants to be, feel comfortable, but that's actually the worst thing, because once you start to get that stable feeling of like, oh, everything's okay, you start to let off the gas, and that's a problem, because then when shit hits the fan, I don't know.
Yeah.
When shit hits the fan, you don't have anything to really back that up anymore, because now you have to deal with all those problems. Whereas if you're staying on the gas, for example, you lose a client, right? You lose a client, and now you're out. You just lost a decent chunk of money. If you had your foot off the gas because you're like, oh, well, I just brought on these 2 clients, I don't have to worry about anything for a while, we're good. You just lost a client. Now you have to do twice as much work, because you have to get back to even, and then you have to get one more to one up. So I kind of circled around that. But there's been a lot of moments where, especially more towards the beginning, where I was like, is this the right decision? Especially in SEO, there's a lot of things changing all the time. So like when I first started, there'd be a slight fluctuation and I would freak out and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. But in reality, Google changes all the time. So what we get paid for is to, 1, get you to the top and make sure that you stay there. So there would be those times where like I would have my client fluctuations in the beginning, and I'd be like, am I on the right path? You know, am I really doing this? Like, should I just pull out? Like, it's getting through those moments is what is going to build your stress muscle. And we were just talking about this. Dealing with those moments sucks, but that's what builds your stress muscle, which helps you keep your foot on the gas and deal with bigger problems, because that's really what it comes down to, you know. More money, more problems, right? So you should be looking for more problems to solve, and you'll be making more money. And that's what it comes down to.
100%. So big picture, like, where is this going now? Where are you headed? Where are you trying to take Online Biz Builders and all the other visions and ideas that you got?
So that's a great question, because the past couple months, I've had a real solid view of what my vision is going to be for the company now. For the first couple years, it was just like, you know, oh, I'm going to start these side projects, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and, you know, build a company and blah, blah, blah. So I cut off all the side projects and just focused on Online Biz Builders, and that was the main focus. And that was the vision, was just Online Biz Builders, Online Biz Builders, Online Biz Builders. And then the last couple months, I sat down and I actually looked at, you know, one of my favorite people is Alex Hormozy, which, you know, we've talked about. And what did he do? So he had his gyms, and then he had his marketing for the gyms, and then he became a PE firm. Buying companies, helping them grow, and then taking them to the next level, and then either selling them or just being equity owners in them. So my thought and my new vision with Online Biz Builders is to continue to grow as an agency, continue to bring on new clients, continue to help as many people as we can. And then we started a little bit, acquisition of online assets. So instead of, you know, acquiring real world companies, acquiring online companies. So moving into the PE space just a little bit, because we have a team that knows what they're doing, they do a phenomenal job, and why can't we buy or become partial equity owners in, you know, an e-commerce store, or, you know, a monetized blog or something like that? We can either, like I said, become a partner or become a full owner and continue to build it. And now we can either keep it or sell it in the future. So I mean, long-term goal for Online Biz Builders is to, of course, keep getting clients and keep helping people, but also to acquire assets that we own or partially own and give other companies, you know, if we're equity owners, the opportunity to aggressively grow, you know?
Yeah, no, that's amazing. They say real estate has made the most millionaires, but business, private equity is where the billionaires play. That's the billionaires playground, I like to say.
Yeah.
That's where the big money's at. Rapid fire round, super rapid fire.
Let's go.
Like lightning.
Let's go.
Ready? What is the most impactful lesson you learned in life?
Fail hard, fast, and fix it up.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Kindness.
If you could change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
Atomic Habits.
What is the legacy you're working on leaving behind?
The ability to support those who have supported me, and then grow to a point to where I can support others that haven't supported me. So help everybody.
And for those of us that want to embark on our walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend we take?
Just start. Go fast. Don't die.
Round of applause for Eric, guys. And networking. And the second guy,
Great job.
this was, I think, maybe like April or May of last year. I went to a networking event that Roxana actually invited me to. I think it was the Latinos of Real Estate event, was it? It was over at Third Place by Half Full, whatever. And I ended up going. And towards the end of the event, I started talking to this guy over here. And we'd known each other through Facebook and social media, but we never actually got a chance to meet in person. We started chopping it up. He's like, yo, Jay, he calls me Jay. Yo, Jay, like, every Friday morning, like, I do a call with my team. I would love to have you on one of these calls to talk about AI. I'm like, okay, dope. When do you want to do it? He's like, can you do it this Friday? Mind you, it's Thursday evening. It was already like Thursday, like 9 p.m. I'm like, Thursday, when's the call? 9 a.m. I'm like, all right, send me the Zoom. Like, I'm in there. I'll be there. And I ended up doing a class for him then, and I ended up doing another class for him. One of the people from, I believe it's the Real Project, her name is Eileen. Eileen was on the call. She invited me to speak at their event in the Bronx in August of last year. Word got out that I did a great job there, and then that led to me speaking at the Tri-State Recon for the for Latinos of Real Estate. I spoke at NAREP in Fairfield County here, and it was all kind of because I met you. So Carnell's an amazing guy, great connector, knows a lot of people. He's killing it in the credit repair space and wealth building space, and he's my next guest. So give a round of applause for Carnell. All right. Oh, no mic. It looked cool. Here, I should throw it. All right, it's not an actual mic. There's nothing connected to it. All right. All right, Carnell,
What's up?
quick elevator pitch for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity, the pleasure to get to meet you yet, man. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, my name is Carnell Newsome. I'm just a normal guy from Danbury, Connecticut, born and raised. Started off in the trades, got into the financial industry during one of the worst times in 2005 is when I first started, 2008, 2009. The mortgage industry collapsed. I was frantic. I was determined to make it. So I got into financial literacy, helping people with their credit. Fast forward 2014, left the mortgage industry and made the financial literacy my full-time career.
Amazing, man. And so I'm going to start off with the same question I asked Eric. Take us in a time machine. What was little Carnell like? I know you got a couple more years on us. What was little Carnell like?
Yeah, so I was always, a person that had an entrepreneurial mindset. I was always a go-getter. I was one of those guys that I know I didn't want to work for someone for the rest of my life. And I thought that, real estate and mortgages was going to be the way, and it was, and fast forward, it got me to where I'm at now, so that's what it was like. So growing up, I never wanted to work for anyone. I used to work jobs just like everybody else. And I always say that one day I'm going to be my own boss. One day I'm going to live life on my own terms. And speaking to existence, now here I am.
Yeah, no, amazing, man. And Carnell, it's one of those things where we have a kind of similar journey where we started in one thing, and that original opportunity that we thought was going to be it ended up just being the next stepping stone to get us to where we eventually were going to end up. And so talk to us about that. Like, what was it like realizing, I know for me, right? So we heard the trailer and I was like, I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams, an investor. So back around that time, my goal was I was going to start selling houses with KW. I was going to start, become rookie of the year, going to start using that money, that side income to get into my rental portfolio and start building that up. And like, it was a big ego hit for me knowing that that didn't work out at all. And so like, what was that like for you? Did it hurt you? What were your thoughts going through when you decided to make that pivot and go from like the mortgage industry to the financial literacy space?
Yeah, so this is what happened. So I had to figure it out fast. When 2008, 2009 happened, when the real estate market crashed, people were quitting the business, people were losing their homes, people were just frantic. And I was like, you know what? Either I'm gonna live off my savings, but at the time I really didn't have any, or I'm gonna go get another job. And me personally, I feel like 2 jobs are for 2 people. Would you agree?
Yeah.
So I started fixing people's credit, got really good at it, but it's very time consuming. Then a real estate friend of mine who happened to be the old previous principal broker in the Danbury Market Center at Keller Williams, told me about the company I bought a franchise in. And when I looked at it, what stood out to me was the financial literacy piece, because when it comes to credit, John, and we know this, that credit is a subject we never taught to us as kids. It wasn't taught to us in elementary school, junior high school, college, grad school, nowhere. So when I joined the company, I paid for my first client to go through this program, and within 35 days, every negative item on this client's credit report came off. The late payments, the collections, the charge-off, everything came off, and I was excited.
Yeah.
And fast forward, I started telling everybody and their mama about what happened, and my business blew up.
That's amazing, man. So let's dive into credit, because a lot of you guys may or may not know. I talk a lot, so I probably told most of you guys, but I'm big into credit cards. I'm Mr. Points and Miles. I like to call myself, right? I got a whole lot of credit cards and a whole lot of points, right? I like to say. And it's one of those things. I remember the first book that I read that made me like even interested at all was a book called, and I recommend everyone to read it. It's a really good book, and it's really easy to understand. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And in there, he talked about this card called the Chase Sapphire Preferred card.
Good card.
And this card is like a partially metal card, Once they said partially metal, I was like, all right, I'm gonna be flexing. I could tap the card on the table and everyone's gonna know I'm a baller, right? That's the first thing I'm thinking in my head. And it was like, you get 4% back on this and 1% back on this. You could transfer it out to travel partners. And I was like, all right, dope. I need to get into the credit card. I need to start building my credit. And before that, actually, shout out to M in the back. So M, she told me about this app called, it's called Self, right? So Self, it's a credit repair building app. And at that time, I didn't have any credit, credit builder, yeah. And so I didn't have any credit. So this is now June of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. I opened up the Self app, and I started using that. A couple weeks later, I got my first card with Bank of America. Like you said, I didn't know anything about credit. I didn't know anything about banks. I would never recommend Bank of America. I learned a lot about them. They done some sketchy things, right? And but at that point in time, that's how I started building my credit. Now fast forward, that's when I eventually ended up learning about the Chase Sapphire Preferred, and I started looking into it a little bit. And then my first ever like solid credit card was the Chase Freedom Flex. I got that December of 2020, and I remember they approved me for like a credit limit of like $1,800, and I'm in my head thinking like, we're gonna be good. And the first month after, maxed out the card.
Maxed it out.
Maxed out the card. Now, fortunately, I had savings, so I paid it off in full before it was due. But like, man, you're not taught how to use it well, right? So I want to start the conversation there, man. What are like some just like best practices when it comes to like using your credit, leveraging your credit? So like you don't do what I did, get happy and excited you got all these points and just max out the card.
Absolutely. So credit is wealth. You know, you can leverage credit to acquire real estate. You leverage credit to get income producing assets, but you got to learn how to manage it. So what I tell everyone to do is ditch the debit and start using the credit, but use it responsibly. So this is what you do.
Write that down. Ditch the debit, use the credit, but use it responsibly, capital responsibly.
That's correct, because with your debit card, when you're using it for gas, you're using it at the store, you're exposing, bad people who like to hack into your account, into your bank account. I had a young lady who used her Bank of America debit card.
There you go.
Yeah, she went and got gas, and then the next morning she woke up, she was negative $1,800 in her bank account. And because it was a debit card, it has no fraud protection on it. So she was crying, she was frantic, she's like, what I'm gonna do? I'm a single mom, 2 beautiful kids. My rent's coming up, how I'm gonna pay it. Bank of America said, well, we don't know what to do, we don't know what to tell you, we're doing an investigation, I don't know what to tell you, file a police report. But with a credit card, guess what? You have fraud protection on it, you have insurance on it. So if you were to have something that goes up there you didn't authorize, they'll give back your money, Johnny, on the spot. So what you do is you make all your purchases with your credit cards. I recommend to get the credit cards that gives you cashback rewards and points. Don't use those rinky-dinky credit cards that does nothing for you. Give you ones that gives you cashback rewards and points. And the reason why is because a dollar saved in today's economy is a dollar earned. Would you agree? Right? So what you do is use the credit card, rack those points up, right? Buy me a gift, just joking. But but rack it up, and then when the bill posts, pay it off the next day with the debit card. And then there's 3 dates you want to be mindful for when it comes to credit cards, right? You want to write this down or put it into your smart devices. The 3 dates you want to keep in mind is the first date is the statement date. The second date is the reporting date. And the third date is the due date. Most of us are taught to pay our bills and our credit cards by when?
The due date.
The due date. Not realizing that whatever is carrying on the balance on that credit card by the statement date, which is also known as the reporting date, is going to determine what balance gets reported to the credit agencies. I got a lot of people that come to me and say, Carnell, why is my score down? I said, well, because you're using 70% of your usage on your credit card. But I paid it off. I understand. Whatever you carry as a balance on that statement date, which also known as a reporting date, is going to dictate where your score is going to go at, right? But if you know the rules of the game, like John was saying, credit's not taught anywhere, you want to use the debit just to pay for the credit. Pay it off as soon as it posts. And use that credit card as much as you can. And here's the reason why. How you said he got approved for a limit of $1,800, which is okay for starters, right? But when you like a limit of $18,000, So what you do is you use that credit card as much as you can, and then every 6 months in one day, guess what you do? Ask for an increase, right? A lot of them will increase the credit card. Someone will do it just as a promotion, and then someone will have to call. This is the way you can leverage credit building, turn into wealth.
Yeah, now I want to second what he's saying. So that Bank of America card is only good for one thing. I don't use it for anything, but every 6 months, I ask them to increase my credit limit, and that boosts my score up just for getting the credit limit increase. So even though I never use the card, one, it's my oldest card, so it has the most amount of my credit history, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which helps me. But then two, it also, when I get those credit limit increases, now my overall credit is now increasing. So 100 divided by 1,000 is 10%. 100 divided by 10,000 is now 1%.
Correct.
And so now my credit utilization is going down, and it reflects in my score. Now my score goes up, and the whole thing. But like when it comes to making up your score, right? A lot of people don't understand like how the credit score is made up, how we actually get graded. And if you're a little bit of a nerd like me, you'll know there's two types of scoring models. There's FICO, there's Vantage, and within both models, there's like a whole bunch of different models that you can get scored on. And like the credit card companies, the score they look at isn't the same one you look at when you get your mortgage. It can get very complicated very quickly. So make it simple for us, man. Like what overall makes up your credit score?
Yeah, so there's 5 key components that makes up your score, right? Your score ranges from 300, that is the lowest you can ever reach on the FICO scoring system. Depends on what FICO scoring system you're applying for, if it's for a mortgage loan or car loan or credit cards, but let's just keep it simple. So, but even though it ranges between 300 being the lowest, 850 being the highest, there are 5 components, that drives 100% of your score. The first major component is your payment history, which makes up 35%. One late payment can cost you anywhere from 50 to 110 points as a loss. I tell most people that when you're struggling financially and you have a bill coming up and you can't pay it, this is what you do. The banks and the lenders, they definitely want to work with you. Contact them ahead of time. Say, hey, my name is Jane or John Doe. I ain't got the dough, right? And can you push my payment back for like 2 months? Can you push my payment back for 3 months? They'll work with you to do that with you. Now, when those 2 or 3 months is about to come up and you still can't pay it, ask can you pay the interest only over the next 6 months. That gives you 6 to 9 months to get back on your feet financially. That avoids late payments. Now, the second component that drives your credit score, makes up 30%, is your amount owed. We call it your capacity or balance to your limit ratio on your revolving credit cards. So if you have a charge card or a credit card, better yet, you want to make sure you keep your credit card balances below 30% and under, they say by the what? Statement date, right? But I'm here to tell you this, the magic number is below 10%, right? So think about a report card, you got A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? If you got your credit utilization at 30% and under by the statement date, you're at the C range. If you get it at, let's say at 5%, you're at like the B plus range. If you get it like between 1 and 3%, you're at like the A plus range, right? So you want to make sure you're keeping those credit cards below that 30% and under. And 30% again is based on the average of all your credit cards, not just individually. Now 15% of your score is based on the age of credit history. So important. I know a lot of people who will start off with these things called secured credit cards, which is okay. And some of the secured credit cards, they have like an annual fee. Some of them, the balance on it is really low. And when you start to get approved for higher credit cards, especially with ones that gives you larger limits or points, cashback rewards, the first thing we'll do is say, you know what, this annual fee is coming up and I hate it. I'm just gonna call them up and I'm gonna close the card out. As soon as you close it out, guess what you just did? You just gave up a bulk of your credit history. Okay, so never close out a card. Ask them, say, hey, listen, you know what? I don't got the money, but this is Jane and John Doe again. I ain't got the dough. Can you do a product upgrade? Can you upgrade me to a better tier credit card that doesn't have these annual fees? Most of the cards would do that for you. Now we move into the end. The next 10%, which is 90% of your credit rating, is made up of 2 types of credit. And see, John, I thought it was always good and bad, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a combination of installment credit versus revolving. And a lot of people have too much revolving, not enough installment. Installment credit is things like a car loan, mortgage loan, personal loan, student loans, mortgage loans, things like that. And then revolving credit is anything you can use today, pay it off tomorrow, and then a line of credit back available again, like credit cards. Okay, so you need to have a mixture of the two. Why do I say this for? John, I used to think credit cards were the devil. I'll be honest with you. I used to say, you know what? I'm never going to get a credit card again. They fooled me. And here's the reason why. When I got my first 2 credit cards, this is what I did. I spent it. I used it up to the max. And I got this bill in the mail. I say, why are they sending me this stupid bill in the mail? I thought it was free money. I didn't know I had to pay it back.
Yeah.
If they told me that, they taught me this in school, I would never took it, right? But I'm here to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, you need to have a credit card if you want to get up into the excellent category when it comes to the credit score, like a 740 and above. Because if you don't have that credit card, you're missing that 30% that's increasing your credit score. Now, the last 10% is based on the number of inquiries you apply for. The maximum amount of inquiries you want to have within a 12 months time frame is between 1 and 3. That's it. Now, when you shop around for mortgage loans, we know that sometimes you might go to different banks, and that's okay. You know, as long as you do that rate shopping within 30 days, those inquiries only impact your credit score more than one time. But if you're looking to get like business funding, they're going to look at the whole overall picture. So you want to make sure you're minimizing those inquiries. So if you master those 5 key components each and every month, your score is going to keep going up. And if you want to learn what those key components are, just Google FICO pie chart. FICO pie chart. There you'll see the 5 components that drives your credit score.
Yeah, all right, so let's zoom out a little bit. Big picture, financial literacy. Where are you trying to take this? Where's it going, big picture?
Yeah, big picture is this, is that credit repair is just a Band-Aid. I'm here to tell you guys this, is that if someone's struggling financially and you don't get to the core root of the problem, what got them in the situation, they're going to end up rinsing and repeating and being back in the same situation. But once you educate a person on how financial literacy works, have them add their rent to their credit, their electric, their cell phone, their gas, their cable, their auto insurance, things like that, that can boost their credit score, show them how to have 6 months in savings. Now you got a person, if they lose their job, guess what's going to happen? They're still going to pay their bills in time. The reason why most people credit go bad, to sum it up, is that when they lose their job, if something bad happens, the first thing to go is their what? Credit, because they got no savings. So financial literacy all day over credit restoration, and then you add a credit restoration on top of that, that's what's going to help you to get an excellent credit score.
Amazing. Now it's time for your rapid fire round, man.
Absolutely.
Ready?
Let's go. I'm always
Lightning
ready.
round.
Okay.
What is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
Pay your bills in time.
What is the most admirable trait a person could have?
Honesty.
If you had to change someone's life with one book, which would it be?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
What is the legacy you're working on leaving behind?
Real estate.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
Get around the right circle. Get around the right people. Get around people who are doing better than you, like the young man said earlier. Those people right there, if you hang around with 5 broke people, you guys know the answer. You're going to become the 6. You hang around 6 wealthy people, you're going to become the 7. So examine your circle, do an audit every single day. Look at the people you talk to. Look at the people you hang around with. That right there will determine which way you're going to go.
Round of applause for Carnell. You guys know that I did an Audible and interviewed Darren. He got a little emotional, but he's not going to admit to it. But this time, Darren is going to interview me. So round of applause for Darren being the podcast host today. You ready?
Yeah, bro. So, John, let me ask this again. Can you give us your elevator pitch? Tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, so everyone, my name is John Mendez, and I'm the founder of Stop and Stare Media, where I help business owners who struggle with social media leverage AI to consistently create content.
All right, that sounds good. John, I know you started out as a realtor, investor, as you said earlier.
Yeah.
But tell us how you got into the AI space. Just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, so when I was still in focus in real estate, I was in a bunch of real estate groups, all focused on how do I sell more houses. All of them are free, and they were all really big. And one day, one of the groups, they were talking about social media. Now, I was in the gym at the time, and I couldn't share, so I was like, all right, let me just type it up and post it in the Facebook group. And from there, I had a bunch of people comment and like it, and one of the hosts of the call was like, hey, John, do you mind teaching a class? Now, up to that point, I never taught a class before. So I was like, I never taught a class. And then she said, John, let me know when you want it scheduled. And so that was what made me teach my first class ever. I called it Intro to Video. I had a little over 440 people sign up for it. And I still remember the nerves. I was in the other room on this side of the office, and that got me started teaching social media. Now, I started teaching social media, fast forward a whole bunch. Around December of this year, I was at a point where I had already stopped focusing on real estate. I tried to turn Stop and Stare Media. Originally, I was gonna do an agency and have clients that I create content for. After my first client, I was like, heck no, not doing this. That sucked. So I was like, all right, that didn't work. Real estate didn't work. Investing didn't work. My podcast numbers were going down. Working at Sign the Whale, and like, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I was like, let me double down on the podcast. I started using ChatGPT for the podcast, and then I ended up joining a mastermind where in there was a course on how to use ChatGPT. After that, I made a webinar on how to use ChatGPT. I used ChatGPT to create the webinar, and that's what blew everything up.
Sounds great, John. Sounds great. I want to take a step back, though. Earlier today, we had a conversation in the elevator about our college experience and about how, you know, if we were in college, we wouldn't have been here. So can you tell everybody, you know, what we talked about earlier and just touch on that? I thought it would be very important to share.
Yeah, so the pandemic happened. It was my freshman year. Towards the end of it, I was doing well in college. I had a 3.78. I was in a bunch of a couple fashion shows, a bunch of clubs, and I genuinely enjoyed the experience for what it was. And for me, going into college, I thought it was a scam going in, but I didn't know another path, so I did what I had to do to get to college. I knew my grandparents didn't have money to pay for it, so I did what I had to do, and UConn was the only school that wasn't going to freaking kill my pockets for the rest of my life. Absolutely. So I ended up going to UConn, and while I was in there, I ended up deciding to major in marketing, only because I didn't really know what I wanted to major in. I knew I wanted something business related. I just figured that marketing was the most fun out of all of them. And honestly, I think had it all played out where the pandemic never happened, I probably, because I would have graduated last year. I was on track to graduate in 4. I don't think I would have went back to get a master's. I probably would be working I think ideally, maybe like a marketing job for like a startup, a company that was trying to get off the ground and like leading some type of marketing initiative or something like that. But honestly, I have no clue how it would have turned out because I was never entrepreneurial. I was not selling candy bars. I was not selling empanada. I was not selling food. I wasn't selling anything in school. My mind was football and Call of Duty, Fortnite when I wasn't playing football. And that's really about it. I wasn't really thinking about ways to make money or become financially free or anything like that at all.
So, John, Walk to Wealth,
Okay.
200th episode.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Take us back to, you know, episode, I think it was around episode 5, where you went on a little bit of a hiatus. I know you said you've taken 3 hiatuses now, but can you explain to us, you know, what went through your mind during that hiatus and how you got back on track?
So a lot of people start podcasts and they like talking about something, whatever the topic may be. And so it's like, all right, dope, I'm gonna start a podcast. Boom, record 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3, 4, 5, 6. By usually episode 7 or 8, most people don't have anything else to say. They run out of things to talk about, which is why most podcasts never make it past 8 episodes, 90% don't. And around that time, I had the same problem. I didn't know what else to talk about. I just got into business, so I didn't do anything in the business space. I didn't have any lessons or stories or anything like that to talk about. And I had already talked about how I dropped out and got into real estate, so I was like, what else is there? And I went on a hiatus for about a month. And my cousin, Brianna, had texted me on IG. She DM'd me. She was like, John, what's going on? You haven't posted in a month. Like, what's happening? And even though it wasn't really much at that time, it was enough to make me realize that someone out there was listening. And that was enough. You can clap it up for that. And so after that, I was like, you know what? Screw it. I got to figure something out. So I was like, let me do some more episodes. Let me start getting guests to talk to. And I ended up, let's see, you were on 100. Now Eric and Carnell, so that's 3. John, Rob, Gio, Silva, Brandon, Guillory. So about half the room has hopped on the podcast. So interviews definitely were the right way to go. But during that time, so back when, where's Gary at? Gary, I think Gary might have left. Gary was also here. He was on the podcast. I didn't know that many people yet. So what I was doing is, so I would interview someone, and I did weekly episodes at the time. And I would split the episodes into 2 weeks. So I would do a part 1 and part 2. So I could have enough time to probably find the next guest. Because I had no one to interview. So I was splitting up episodes, right? And then from there, that was hiatus number 1. Fast forward, last June, I did my biggest ever launch, which actually allowed me to go all into my business and put my 2 weeks at Sign the Whale. And that was the biggest project up to that time. It was a 4-day workshop. I was going to be teaching for like 2 hours each day. I had emails going out and all this bunch of stuff. And at that time, I didn't even have an editor yet. So like, it was just me doing everything, trying to manage everything. And I still have the podcast. So like for a month and a half, I was all in on trying to get the launch going. So I was like, man, something got to get put on the back burner. Ended up being the podcast. Now that launch went really well. So I glad it all played out the way it did. I wouldn't redo it any other way. But that was the second hiatus. Now the third hiatus, same reason, I was doing the AI won't replace me challenge. And that was gonna be my big challenge I did this January. I mean, I had some, this is a story for another day, but yeah, the plan originally was a 100K launch. Didn't get anywhere near close, but that was the mindset going in. So I'm like, man, second launch went well. This launch is gonna be the biggest thing ever. I'm about to put Stanford on the map. I'm gonna do some numbers. Like, man, I had some big dreams for that. Also, at the same time, the month before leading up to it, I went to Guatemala for like 3 weeks. So I was out the country, and I still had to plan the launch. And at this time now I have an editor, but my editor, he started ghosting me. He lives in the Philippines, so like he would get typhoons and lose Wi-Fi for a week, and then he was like going through some things personally, and so like, man, he got behind. And then I hired this other editor from Bangladesh, and then he worked at a startup and had 2 other clients plus me. And so he sold me a dream saying he could keep up with the content, and he couldn't keep up with the content. And so like now I'm looking for new editors while I'm in Guatemala, while I'm trying to plan this big 100K launch that was nowhere near close to 100K. And so like I was like, something got to get put on the back burner, and it ended up being the podcast again. So that's my 3 hiatuses, but somehow we still made it to 200. So luckily I never stopped.
Yeah. You know, it's fantastic. I can tell you, I was one of the listeners. I was waiting on
For anyone that doesn't know, I can proudly say that I convinced Darren to drop out of college. So let's give a round of applause for that, for dropping out.
He did. He convinced me.
Nothing like good old peer pressure.
It's working out great. I love it.
Yeah.
So John, back to your business. I know we talked earlier when we were in the office. You have some big plans coming up for your business. Can you give us just a little bit of insight on what you're potentially doing?
So, man, where do I even start? I'm a big idea guy, man. So like, ideal world, like I'm trailblazing right now, and like where AI is still relatively new, even though to me it's not. A lot of people haven't still really adopted it yet. And so like, I feel like I've been trailblazing for like almost a year and a half now, trying to teach people, and I feel like the market hasn't really reached the point where like they feel like they have to go all into AI quite yet. And like, I'm just like, if I stick through with this, by the time the market does, like, it's just gonna explode. I want to get into like, not only just coaching, but like get into like super high ticket consulting for like big companies. I want to build out my team. There's some people I've been scoping out that I want to add to the team to help grow this empire. Right? So I feel like this whole AI thing it started off as just real estate agents specifically, but like this is like across all industries. AI is about to disrupt everything it already has, and like the way this is going, if I stick with it and play it the right way, like it could be massive and just like becoming the thought leader in the AI space and just running that up. But more importantly, what we're all here for today, walk to wealth. Like that's what we're here. I always say, I told a couple of you guys, like AI fulfills the pockets. Right now the business is hard, so not doing too much fulfilling, but stages of business, right? And seasons. But I always say the podcast fulfills my purpose, and that's something why I always stuck with it. That's the reason why I got to 200. It's something that I genuinely enjoy doing. I was talking to Myra and Roxana over there by the pizzas and telling them a little bit, but this is where I want to take everything. And I think the difference between a goal and a mission or your purpose, and I learned this about 2 years ago, is that a goal is something that's attainable in your life. It's something that's quantifiable, that's measurable, that you can achieve. your purpose is something that's bigger than you. It's something that you'll never be able to achieve. You'll never be able to reach. And there's this old saying that talks about like planting seeds for trees that you'll never get to enjoy the shade, right? And like I feel like with the podcast, that's what it is. I'm planting trees, and I'm never going to be able to enjoy the shade that the tree bears, right? Like the tree produces, whatever. But someone else will. And so like I'm doing this to document the journey and just meet cool people and honestly just see where it all grows and develops to, because when it does eventually catches its own wings and starts flying, like I think the AI is super big, and I love teaching, which is why I still do it. I'm not a tech guy by any stretch of the imagination, but like the whole mission with Walk to Wealth, I think that's global. Like that's something that can go everywhere. So that's like why I'm still sticking with it, why I'm still staying consistent, and like I don't know where it's going or how it's gonna look like in a couple of years, but for right now, it's just staying consistent with the podcast.
All right. I don't have any more questions, so we're gonna do rapid fire.
Rapid fire round.
Okay.
Come up with your own questions. How you like that? Rapid fire with a twist.
Bro, you put it on me.
What would you want to ask me if no one else was here? We were just chopping it up.
I don't think you want to know that.
Never mind.
All right. So, all right. Yeah, what hair product do you use?
So right now, I got the TGIN. Shout out to TGIN. I got their shampoo and conditioner right now. I use the Shea Moisture Intensive Manuka Honey Hydration line for my leave-in. Curling hands, and I got the Shea Moisture Curling Hand Smoothie to make have that little extra, pizzazz, that razzle dazzle. You know what I'm saying?
All right. For all the aspiring entrepreneurs or someone who's looking to get into the field, what would you tell them as far as getting started?
Fail fast, fail often.
Yep. And
Think of one more good one. I don't want to put you on the spot for too long.
If you had to tell someone today, if there's one thing you could tell someone about AI today, what would you tell them?
That's a layup, man. You know what I'm going to say is that AI won't replace you. Someone using AI will.
That's a good place to end.
I appreciate you.